Welcome back to another episode of Lewwe here from Doc. I'm your host, Amanda Japal, and with me is Dr. Right Honorable Keith Claudius Mitchell. So, Dr. Mitchell, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, very much. I had about 90 minutes on my treadmill this morning and over 1,300 calories. So,
Well, you look happy today. Did something good happen over the weekend?
well, yes, I would say in the sense that um, I feel the mood of the country and where people are seeing what's taking place. It's setting the right message for those of us in the National Party who want to see the rescue of this country, would feel a sense of more, would have a stronger sense of purpose. And I'm getting reports from the field visits both in River Road, Dabo and St. Patrick West yesterday. And the general mood you go around with this sense of disaffection with the present government and what is taking place in the country, how people are feeling. So I think in a general sense, while you hurt for them, I think politically you must feel that things are on the right track going forward.
Sometime last week we spoke about the delay in the budget. But during your tenure, how did your government ensure that budget preparations remain on schedule while still being thorough?
Well, I think it is basic, it's about if you have a task and like the budget is a serious task, a serious exercise, you have to plan. You have, first of all, you have to have the people in place, and I know that there are some excellent public servants who have worked with us and worked with successive governments. They are the ultimate professionals. They're not political people, in my experience with them, and I think that's how it should be. And they provided the work, but we provide leadership, and we gave direction as to what is expected. What are the main criteria or issues of importance because we are in the policy making for the government of the day and set them the parameters they have to work with, and they proceeded to work and give interim reports as time went on. And that starts long around September, October. So by the time you reach budget with all this permutation of different aspects of the preparation of the numbers, you're able to look at what the final figure should be, and also to be able to know that you can't earn $10 in any business, and a budget is a serious business. Budget for the development of the country is a serious business. You can't earn $10 and spend 20. So you have to know what are your sources of revenue, what are the projected revenues that you expect, and you may want to say you should not go to the maximum level of your own expectation. You should find some middle road, not the minimum, not the max. So at least if there are some drop in revenue, at least you would fall within the range that is expected, and you'll be able to cope with your programs that you plan to. And then after you've done that, then you look at what are the main items of expenditure. You have some issues that are recurrent, that the debts you have to meet and responsibility to meet to the country. You have to meet that. There are some basic areas of services that you can't reduce. But there are other areas that you have to consider a reduction based on the resources that you have available. And in the final analysis, you must have the surplus necessary when you look at expenditure and revenue to be able to invest in the capital stock of the country. This is why the present government, when they came in, they met a tremendous amount of resources because we were planning to invest in the capital project, and we had several capital projects ongoing. And that's where the jobs are created. That's where economic activities are created. That's where the country's future prospects for a brighter future will be dependent on, and you ensure that you have sufficient of that. In addition to the projects that you're thinking of implementing and so additional projects. So you have the resources available, you have the capital program that you have, and like you get some soft loans from the international community, whether it's the World Bank, whether other friendly governments and agencies like we used to get. And that a mixture of the grant support and soft loans and savings from the recurrent and from the recurrent budget. That gives you the room now to invest in capital activities. That's where jobs are created. So, for example, when we were doing over 6,000 workers on the road at different times of the year, 3 or 4 times with 4 and 5 fortnights. So that money was being spread around the country. So the poor men and poor women who have their basic needs to satisfy, they were able to do things for themselves and help their families and by implication their own villages and communities. And that is where you saw the buzzing of activities on the ground. And it is easy, Wanda, to understand this, because if as an average person, you don't need to go when you walk into a country. You don't need to see the numbers from the Ministry of Finance or some economists to tell you think bad or think good. You don't need that, The average man can see when things are good and when things are bad. So you could have all your drone activity. You could have all your rallies and paying people to come to rallies and so on. Men dressing up as if it's a carnival function and prizes given. You could bring in all foreign dignitaries as you want and so on. You could do that. But the bottom line is, how the people feeling? And in fact, if you're going to spend a lot on these fancy stuff, and I'm hungry, I'm getting more mad about you because I feel it is my money. I should be getting a bit of that to help me to create job opportunities for my family. And here you are enjoying yourself. Your ego is satisfied because you're living good. Everybody dressing up nice and everybody fed for so drinks, food, and so on. But I'm hungry. So that's the problem, I think. You're saying. I heard somebody said, but as Carrot say, he would come in Northwest to run against me. So I said, I'd love to go in Dominica and run against him. Especially now I have more time than he has. I'm not in government, so I could go on the ground and do a lot more work than he. So that's a message I want to send to my good brother.
Not as a no.
Oh,
We've
Lord.
seen that many times before.
Yes, that's right.
We've seen that many times before. I think you for the last couple of years you've been getting over 70%, 80%.
No, it's not over. The last time was 80. The first time I ran, I got 60% of the votes in Northwest St. George's. Because Gary was very strong. That was Gary's seat over the years. Never. First time it was won by an opposing party to Gary's was when I ran. Because my parents were all strong Gary supporters. So that village was all strong. So they voted 60% and Gary got 40. The next election, our party split up in about 4 ways. So I should have lost. Because I was with Brazan, I was with Alexis, I was with Blaze, and a number of other members who took votes when the party split up away from me. But because of my contact with people, I still got 70% of the votes. At that time, I got a lot of the Gary supporters, because Gary started calling me his political son. So I was able to benefit tremendously from Sir Eric's perception of support for me going forward. And since then, I've not got anything less than 80%. And the last election was 80%. And in 1991, it was 91%. So who want to come and get buried in Northwest? I welcome them.
You'd have a cemetery waiting for them.
Yeah, it's right up in the fence.
Oh, God.
So, the next time we might go to St. David's to bury somebody. That's the next step we will do. I would have fun. After Skerrit, I'll go to St. David's and afterwards.
You're doing too much now. But back to the budget. Given the delay, do you think that the extra time will result in a more comprehensive budget, or does it signal?
No, it has nothing to do with that, because if you're not prepared and you know when a budget is supposed to be presented, the amount of time you take doesn't necessarily imply that you will be provide a better budget. The lack of preparation is the issue, lack of planning, the lack of utilization of the appropriate personnel, the lack of guidance from a policy standpoint, because the officers in the ministry, different ministries who have to give projections and make recommendations, they will do nothing until you give a clear indication of what your policies are. And that, because that's not their responsibility. They're not policy makers. They are just public servants doing their job based on the instructions that they receive.
Well, you gave us a few info a while ago, right? But can you walk us through the level of preparation that went into crafting a national budget under your tenure?
But as I said, you have to first examine the sources of revenue that are available to you. You must know this because, as I said before, you can earn $10 and spend 20. So you look at all areas of possibilities. In other words, if you invest in the capital stocks and you expect revenue generation, you'll do a projection and an estimation. Now, in my one of my major area of academic research was in estimation theory. So my doctorate was in that area. That's why I did a lot of work for regional international institutions and many Department of Energy in the United States, Department of Defense. I was doing some work on mathematical modeling for the Department of Defense when I was in Washington. This estimation theory is my doctorate was in that area. So it's a ridge regression analysis that I was doing. So you're able to project using your own intuitive knowledge about what is in the system, the different variables available. So in a multivariate way, you are able to project what is a possible projection of revenue that you may have. Given that you're trying your best not to overestimate to the point that you may fall too short. If you fall within a 5% range of error, then that's okay. But if you fall out of 20% and 30%, that means you're bad. You did some poor estimation going forward. So you have to be very careful and realistic. Then, of course, you look at, as I said before, the commitments that you have you must meet. You look at any other additional areas that you feel you may have to invest in, because things change over a period of time, and one area that you may not have to deal with in one budget the next year, things could change. For example, remember when COVID came, we didn't have the level of commitment that we had to have in dealing with a number of the social issues, because it really decimated the country in many respects. So we have to invest more. So you must know of the possibility of what can be expected going forward. So these are fundamental things, and can be done overnight. That's why you need months of preparation and examination and changes and new projections before you come to a final document going forward. And then you have to bring your political persons must be sensitized. So you have to have discussions with the cabinet members. I'm talking a while ago, I was talking to you about the Minister of Finance role and the government leadership role. And then you discuss with your team. You will come up with different ideas, way to improve on what you have provided, or things that you may have left out. They would bring in their own thought process to it. So when that comes out of the cabinet, then of course you involve in your constituents as a whole and explain to them some of the issues without going into the technical aspect, because they probably would not understand, but they will come into the policy issues. For example, you say, we're going to be investing more in road construction this year. We're investing more in building more homes. We have about 400 homes to build, that kinds of stuff. So people would know where these homes are going to be and what are your areas of concentration for these various homes that you have. So that would be some of the areas and parameters and so on. And then you have to be aware. You must also have something in store for unforeseen circumstances. Remember, when Ivan came, we had nothing. Because the history of this country, you spend what you earn and so on. But we recognize that created a clear understanding as we must also have some fund available in case when you call a disaster fund and so on, and you work with the international community as we did to have this what you call hurricane clause, so that if you have a disaster, you won't have to meet some of the debts. You have to show that you have to spend this money. Say what you normally have to pay in debt, you want to pay it in solving fundamental problems. But you don't invoke that clause easily like the previous government. We did it when we had Ivan, a massive destruction in the country, and it was not just one part of the country. Like in Carrick, we had a serious problem in Carrick, and you got money over $180 million to help to deal with that, and so on. But the government went immediately and went and invoked the hurricane clause, because why you don't do it arbitrarily or without serious reasons is because the debt will continue to mount. Then it doesn't mean that the debt will not be paid, or the payments that you have to make. It just means that it makes the principal payment added up, because the interest will be added to principal, there will be additional principal. And therefore, when you start to pay again, the amount you have to pay would probably be more than that you would normally pay if you did not do it on the time, if you did not invoke that clause. So you don't do it lightly. So you have to make preparation for this, and of course you have to, in meeting your debt payments, you have to understand where are we. When we came to government in 2013, we had a debt to GDP ratio of over 110%. That was unacceptable, and therefore we had to do a lot of work. We had to do a lot of planning, and of course take into consideration various things, meeting social welfare responsibilities and so on, and other basic areas of that we had no choice but to. But at the same time, we had to do a lot to bring down the debt. And we were able to achieve that in a few years and bring it down to 60%. So that really, so doing a budget is a very complex matter. And therefore, you involve everyone you can. And one thing we are good at, I always seek the advice of people that went before me, whether they were in government or not. I think that's one of the biggest fault of this government, and particularly this leader, who believes in himself that he knows it all, with no experience in the government service, no experience he behaves as if he knows it all, and that's why there's so many mistakes, because he's lacking the knowledge, lacking experience, but his ego and his lack of understanding of people makes him believe that he's some Jesus Christ, so that just fell from heaven and come down to solve our problems here. And therefore he doesn't have to talk to anybody, including his men. You notice, I was reported to me yesterday, the jersey that you see is one person, not members of the team. One man. And that tells you something. I would never have attempted to do that even as in government, because I would want the team to be there, because I know a man is as good as the team that he has. As I said, the family structure is as good as each member of the family. If one family member goes astray, it affects the whole product going forward. But I don't think that our present leader understands the dynamics of this issue of involving people around you sufficiently, and how in the end, when you do it, you get in all the credit. So if you're that occupied with ego, then your ego will be satisfied if you involve everybody and get the best product, instead of you going forward with limited knowledge and making a decision which does not work to the best of the overall project.
You mentioned speaking to persons, so that's basically consultation, and the NNP stakeholder consultation was a big part of your administration's budgeting process.
Yes.
But we've seen the challenges with this administration, the failure to speak to the unions and all these things. So just enlighten us of just enlighten us about the risk that are there if we do not consult with our stakeholders and for that budget.
It makes so much sense. If the budget involves the people of the country, it would be unwise to present a budget after you meet with your team and you satisfy yourself at the level of the policymakers. You have the trade unions. It would be unwise because you're setting up yourself for trouble going down the road if you don't do that. You want to meet with the business community. You want to share your views and listen to them because they might have ideas and areas that you may not have thought about. You listen to them. We also involve the conference, the churches, not just the conference, a wide cross-section of churches, because they have moral responsibility for what's taking place in the country. So they would add their voices. And then you have the non-governmental community, limited as they were, but certainly their voice. Most of it maybe that you may not necessarily be supportive of, but listening to them also gives you a perspective that is maybe necessary in coming up your final document, coming up with your final document going forward. So any government that does not do their best in consulting with all these various stakeholders is doing a disservice to itself. You gain nothing. You lose a lot and you gain nothing by consulting a wide cross-section of the community in presenting any important document. And by the way, it's not just in a budget. Any serious major decision you make, the wider the consultation, the wider the forces that you meet with in your community, the better the decision comes out to be. Because we have made mistakes when we thought something we didn't have to necessarily consult. We find out later that it brought us some confusion and we would have been better advised to have consulted broadly first before we came forward with that decision.
Well, you just mentioned decision. So, what is your personal process for making difficult decisions? We're moving away from the budget, especially when there's no clear right or wrong answer.
Well, I think first of all, that's why, and I think in any serious areas of responsibility, I think experience plays a major part of this. I was a cricket captain. As you know, I captained Grenada, and I captained the Lewwe youth team. It's a just 18-year-old man traveling all over the Caribbean, meeting different people. Guys on the team are from Antigua, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Montserrat, St. Kitts. I never met before. But you had to bring these people together and you had to lead them. Now, if you don't lead properly, you're not going to get the best out of your team. And therefore, knowing that leadership involves bringing people together, listening to people, and making them feel part of the process of what you're doing. So that is in sports, So, but I had the experience of having played at my country's level, captain in Grenada and so on and so on. So I had that experience playing cricket. And when I went to Barbados to study, I played cricket on one of the most successful first division team in Barbados, Empire First Division Club. And those days, Empire First Division Club had about 6 of its players playing for the West Indies and for Barbados. The captain of Barbados, a guy named the wicketkeeper of Barbados called Danny Boxell. Then you had Charlie Griffith, who was one of the best fast bowlers West Indies ever had. Roy Branca, Tony King, a number of test players were on that team. And then Gary Sovers came and played with us, but not a regular throughout the whole season. So me playing at that level gave me the experience. So when you reach the level of captaining a team with diverse number of players, it gives you the ability, it gives you the experience so that you know that you must involve everyone in the process, because despite the fact that you might have the most experience among them, you don't know it all. So that's sports. In business, the same thing. If you're in a serious business and you're involved in that, if you don't want to talk to the little cleaner in the office, have ideas that may be very helpful for the management of the team in going forward and so on. And similar in politics was even more so. You have to consult, you have to meet with people at different levels. So that's my history, and I always value this. And as I said earlier on, if you have that ego of not wanting to feel that you achieve. The best way to do it is to make sure you involve everyone around you. Because when the final product is done or made or decided on, if it comes out good, you get it all the credit. And if it comes out bad, then you have to take responsibility. You can't duck and say, it's Amanda that tell me this, or it's John that tell me. Some people go at that, you know. They like to take credit for everything that turns out good.
Did you sell?
But the day hear something, not me now, this one to tell me this, and that one to tell me this. I've seen that enough in the politics, too.
So can you story time now. So can you share a time when you had to pivot or change your direction unexpectedly? How did you navigate that?
Well, there's a number of times that you certainly had to do that. I mean, I remember the great story of when I first got into government and some decision that I made, and when the licks had to flow, I had to back up fast in the process of changing the decision that I made. That was normal. I remember sometimes deciding on a road as Minister of Works, and they said a road to be done. And when we proceeded to start to find out that that was not the people's intention, and therefore the backlash came, and I had to change my position very quickly. The famous one was when I had the problem with the lack of crushed stone in the country, and I was Minister of Works. And the European Union had given us €6 million to build the Eastern Main Road going from St. Paul's. And that's the first time in government. And I didn't really understand the dynamics of this political ministerial work. So I looked at it in terms of practical economic standpoint and decided the European Union says, well, if you don't have stone, we're taking back the money. So either import a stone and we pay for it and you could continue the work. So I say, well, that makes sense. I can't let this €6 million. Those days, a euro was about 3 point something EC. So you're looking at about $18 million in those days. I said, no. So I went and made this year and even tell my cabinet, ooh, licks everywhere I go. They start calling me Dr. Stone. Everywhere I go, stone in my skin, stone. Dr. Stone, even in my own constituency, I can't pass the constituency. Dr. Stone. And the greatest joke is I reach home and the Olinga, my son, he was about 7 or 8 years. As soon as I reach him, he was Dr. Stone. I said, I can't take no more of that. Not you. I take enough all over the place. I'm not taking this from you. He never called me Dr. Stone again. And the wife had said then, why are you bothering the child here? I said, well, you don't know what I face outside there. So that's life. You see, you have to have a sense of humility about you in the decision-making process. You are never going to make every decision you make right. But how you deal with the errors that you may have made or the missteps, that's going to be more crucial than anything else. And I gave you the story about the public servants I sent home, and I went on national television and apologized. This works for you. It doesn't. It lifts the burden of discomfort that you have and feeling that you did something wrong, and it takes that comes off the chest, so to speak, when you say that I was wrong and I'm correcting it and bringing back those people back into their responsibility and apologize to them. You become a bigger person in the eyes of a lot of people.
I am laughing because sometime last week I heard the story of another politician that recently got stoned in a certain constituency.
Yeah, I didn't know.
But
did they still stoning people in meetings? I didn't know that.
So we have a new stone boss in there.
I don't know about that one. I'm glad you mentioned it to me because I never heard that myself. So,
do you believe that intuition plays a role in a high-level decision-making, or should leaders just always rely purely on data and just logic?
No, data is important and fundamental. If you're a serious person of science, you know that works. But your intuition is important. and I believe also touching base with the people that you have to serve and the people that would have to face the consequences of that decision. In other words, while the data might tell you this,
Mm-hmm.
and while your intuition might say that, in the final analysis, for both of these situations to be right, it has to be, the people must be satisfied. So a mixture of both might be the best, and consultation with the people result in the best product going forward.
If you could sit down with any historical figure, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Wait, that's a tough one. Who would that be? And what I would ask them? Oh, that's a difficult one. Because there are lots of people that I admire in my whole life going forward. I always had tremendous respect for Martin Luther King, because when you look at the period of time that he was talking, what you call the revolutionary things that he was saying about freedom for people, and that the white structure must also understand every one of us are human beings and we have a right to the things that everybody is receiving. Some people are receiving. So I thought it took a lot of courage, and in the face of knowing that he could be killed, he seemed to have come to terms with this. You remember the famous speech on the mountain, and he said that I have a dream, I have a dream. And he said, well, long life is something I always would want. But that don't mean anything now. I'm comfortable. If I have to die tomorrow, then so be it. It takes a lot of courage for a man to know that his physical fate is before him, and to stand up and do what he knows that he felt that he had to do. So clearly, somebody has always been a hero. Mandela, of course, is a man that has to face the racist system in South Africa and had to stand up and to face the consequences of this. Could not have been easy, and I think that's another thing. So clearly, I think these are two people that I've had a tremendous admiration for going forward, and I have sporting heroes, of course. The great Gary Sobers is a cricketer. I always looked at, to me, it was not human, because he was capable to bowl, to field, to bat, probably better than anybody else. So one man with that combination of skills, and is somebody I had a lot of opportunity to interact with him, and he's somebody else I respect a lot going forward. So that's my history.
Morris Bishop or Eric Matthew Gary?
Now, Eric Gary would be the person I would look forward to. I was around both of them,
Right.
and that's the benefit. A lot of people talk about Gary. They don't know him. I played cricket with him. I traveled with him. I socialized with him. I went to parties with him. So I know that man. He was not perfect. He had a number of weaknesses, but he was somebody that you genuinely respected and admired. And from the things that he stood for, and he standing in the 51 revolution to stand up for the poor estate workers. You can't forget that. And his general bravery having to stand up against the British colonial infrastructure, to stand up and have to be arrested and face the consequences of going put in a battleship and all kinds of stuff. And you have to give him credit. People condemn him for a lot of other things, but in life you always have to take the best of what an individual. None of us are perfect, and and therefore we have to look to the things that we did, the humility and the sacrifices that they made. I was in the MGM with Morris Bishop and Jacqueline Kreff, and I was one of the 7 members of the Bureau. A lot of people don't know this. So we had meeting in St. Paul's, Morris's home, on a regular basis. I was a public relations officer of the original engine with Teddy Victor, Sebastian Thomas, Greenface, Kendrick Radix, and so on. About 8 or 9 of us. So I know this individual privately. We limed, we partied together, and we socialized, and we politics together. So I could say, without any doubt, that I would prefer to be around Eric Gary. If you had the choice between Morris and Eric Gary, Gary would be my choice.
Well, Dr. Mitchell, we're about to wrap up now. So my last question to you is this: the NDC had just hosted a rally. How are people reacting to the size and the energy of that rally?
Well, first of all, it appears from what people say
Mm-hmm.
that for the amount of money that was spent and all the glamour and attractiveness and the things that were resources, monies were offered for people coming and so on. The kinds of things that you went that you had to cut off 2/3 of the field where you put your thing out. Because I mean, as you know, Boucherjou is a ground that I helped to create. That place in Boucherjou there was what you call a cane field. So it was in Neckles Estate. And when I got into government in 84, and the estate was, because the PRG had acquired the estate during the PRG time, and the Neckles family suffered because they did not have the access to their property. So when the revolution collapsed, the Prime Minister then, Robert Blaze, decided to give back a lot of these people whose property was acquired and not paid for. He gave them back. So I insisted to Mr. Blaze in the process of giving them back. They have two things I wanted. A number of people in Boucherjou were living, build houses on Neckles and them property. And clearly this has to be settled. So I needed some lands, a few acres of lands from that whole section in Boucherjou. I insisted, even where the Chinese houses are, that we took some of those paid Neckles directly for, based on the value at the time, and that I wanted that portion where the playing field is. And Mr. Blaze then agreed with the cabinet to make that available. So a lot of people don't know. So when they're going and having fun, I want to bury me in my own playing field. I love this. So if they know the history, they probably would not have gone there. That facility was a lot to do with the effort of the NNP and myself in that period of time. So this is one of the best playing fields in the country, where this field, I play cricket all over the world, in England and other places, and I mean, this field is compared to any other field as far as a cricket ground is concerned. That's why a lot of top class cricket games are played in Boucherjou. And that's why you notice a lot of the schools, I noticed the secondary schools are having their sports in Boucherjou today, and so on. And many of them always invite me to pass by and so on, and so on. So I just say that I noticed they came to Boucherjou, and they had a lot to eat and drink, and it's good for them. But I don't know what they did to barricade Mitchell and in fact, I think if they're smart, they would never make a statement of burying someone that has a legacy of 40 years of service in the country. I think that is a testimony to the inexperience and immaturity of the present leadership of the National Democratic Congress. When I started in politics, I had a difference with Eric Gary, but I recognized his history and his performance. And we went to his constituency. I never went there talking about burying him. If anything, I went there and praised him for his success and said, well, it's time for new leadership. In fact, that should have been the better approach. Instead of saying you're coming there to bury me. It's almost insulting to yourself, because you were a little boy, maybe hardly walking when I started my service in government, and the people in history could tell you of that service. So you don't go there in the area to try to bury someone you hardly knew, and hardly knew of the service that person represents. But it's not on me. I don't feel upset with it. If anything, I laugh at it, And I think they're the ones that should be upset with. They're the ones that are looking bad for the language used, and that I would never allow any one of my supporters to use that language to discuss, to describe, to talk with somebody who have provided 40 years of service to the country, 23 years as Prime Minister of the country. And I wasn't perfect, but there must have been a lot of things that were done positively that made people continue to vote consistently for me over the period of time, and the new National Party, accordingly.
So thank you so much, Doc. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
Show them